wondered if your Pomeranian is truly being yappy, or if they're actually trying to tell you something that's important? Many small breeds, especially Pomeranians, get a bad reputation for barking. People often think it's misbehavior or stubbornness, but here's the truth. Barking is one of the main ways dogs communicate. For a small dog like a Pomeranian, their bark is like their megaphone. It's their voice, and it carries a lot of meaning. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into why Pomeranians bark so much, the difference between healthy communication and problematic barking, and the 5 key signs that your Pomeranian's barking is communication, not misbehavior. We'll also talk about when barking becomes an actual behavioral issue and how to manage it. So if you've ever been embarrassed by your Pomeranians barking, or if you've been told they're just a yappy little dog, stay tuned. You might walk away with a whole new perspective on your pup's voice. First, let's clear something up. Barking isn't bad. For Pomeranians, barking is literally part of who they are. Pomeranians come from the Spitz family of dogs, and historically they were bred as watchdogs and companions. Even though today's Pomeranians weigh just a few pounds, their ancestors were much larger and used their bark to alert humans to danger. That instinct is still alive in them today. Because of their small size, Pomeranians rely more on vocalization than on physical presence. A large dog might rely on their body language or intimidation, but a Pom uses their bark to get their point across. This is why small dogs often seem to bark more. It's not that they're trying to annoy anyone, it's simply how they communicate. Unfortunately, because Pomeranians are small, their bark is often higher pitched and sharper than a big dog's. To human ears, that sound could come across as yappy. But if we take the time to understand the context, we'll see that most of their time they're just being alert, playful, or social. So the next time you hear your Pomeranian barking, instead of asking, "How do I make it stop?" ask yourself, what are they trying to say? Now, 5 signs that your Pomeranian's barking is communication. Let's start with the most common type, alert barking. Your Pomeranian hears a knock at the door, footsteps in the hallway, or even a leaf blowing across the yard. They'll start barking like crazy. This isn't misbehavior. It's actually your Pom saying something's happening, pay attention. Or in the wild or in their working history, this was essential. Alert barking helps protect families and property. With small breeds like Pomeranians, the bark is their alarm system. So how can you handle this? First, acknowledge their communication. Ignoring it can completely make them bark more because they'll think that they're not getting their message across. Walk over, check the situation, and calmly tell your dog, "Thank you, I see it." Then redirect them. When they realize that you've got it handled, they may settle down faster. The key is balance. Don't punish them for doing what they're bred to do. Instead, teach them when enough is enough. Next is excited barking. This happens when you come home, when it's playtime, or sometimes even during training sessions. Your Pomeranian jumps, spins, and barks with excitement. This is pure joy. They're saying, "I'm so happy you're here," or "This is fun." A lot of owners misinterpret this as hyperactivity or misbehavior, but it's actually a sign of a strong bond. If you've ever been greeted at the door by a Pom going absolutely wild with barks, you know what I mean. It feels like they're throwing you a personal party. Now, the challenge is when excitement barking gets out of control. Like if you can't get them to calm down long enough to put on their leash. One way to manage this, though, is teaching a calming cue like sit or wait before rewarding them with what they want, whether it's going outside or playing. That way, their bark remains healthy communication but doesn't take over the situation. Another important type is request barking. This is when your Pomeranian barks to tell you they need or want something. Maybe they're standing by the door, barking to go outside. Maybe they're bringing you a toy and giving you a few sharp barks to say, "Hey, play with me." Or maybe they're asking for food or water. This kind of barking is incredibly purposeful. It's communication at its clearest. In fact, many Pomeranians train their humans without us even realizing it. We hear the bark, and we respond by opening the door or picking up the toy. Now, is there a risk of spoiling them if we respond every time? Possibly. That's where boundaries come in. If the barking becomes demanding rather than communicative, for example, if they bark at you nonstop for attention, you can teach them a calmer signal, like sitting by the door instead of barking. But don't forget, request barking means your dog trusts you to meet their needs, and that's a positive thing. Protective barking is another very common one of Pomeranians barking. They may be tiny, but their hearts are huge. If they sense that you, their person, are in danger, or even if they just think a stranger is too close, they'll bark to protect you. This instinct comes from their watchdog history. Even though they're not going to physically stop an intruder, they see it as their job to raise the alarm. If your Pomeranian positions themselves in front of you and barks, that's a protective signal. It can feel overwhelming though when they bark at every stranger, but then again, it's not misbehavior, it's loyalty. Training here involves teaching them that not every person or noise is a threat. Socialization, desensitization, and positive reinforcement can help them feel less on edge. Finally, let's talk about social barking. This is when your Pomeranian barks in response to other dogs, animals, or environmental sounds. For example, they might bark when they hear another dog in the neighborhood, or even if they hear sirens or birds. Social barking is your Pom's way of joining the conversation. It's a canine version of saying, "Hey, I hear you and I'm here too." This type of barking is normal, but it can get excessive if every little sound sets them off. One helpful tip is to provide plenty of mental stimulation and exercise. A well-stimulated Pom is less likely to bark every passing sound just for something to do. So when does communication cross the line into a barking problem? Here are some red flags. Barking goes on for long stretches without stopping. They bark every small noise all day long. Barking is triggered by anxiety when left alone, also known as separation anxiety. You see signs of stress, pacing, whining, destruction, along with the barking. At this point, barking is no longer a healthy communication. It's an expression of stress or an unmet need. Some solutions can include regular exercise and mental enrichment, training commands like quiet or redirection, creating a calm, safe space for them, and gradual desensitization to triggers. If the problem is rooted in anxiety, working with a trainer or even consulting with your vet may help. So let's bring it all together. Barking is not the enemy. For Pomeranians and other small breeds, it's their main way of expressing themselves. The 5 signs we covered, alert barking, excited barking, request barking, protective barking, and social barking, are all forms of communication, not misbehavior. When we learn to recognize the meaning behind each type, we stop seeing our dogs as yappy and start seeing them as talkative little companions with something important to say. Of course, barking can sometimes cross into a behavior problem. The key is to know when it's communication and when it's stress or habit. By setting boundaries, providing training, and meeting your Pom's needs, you can strike the perfect balance. At the end of the day, your Pomeranians Bark is their voice. And when we learn to listen, our bond with them only gets stronger. So I'd love to hear from you. Does your Pomeranian bark the most when they're excited, protective, or maybe when they're asking for something? Drop a comment down below and share your experience. If you enjoyed this video, you may enjoy my video on why your Pomeranian barks at some strangers, but not others. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to hug your Pom today.